Hi, and welcome to another session of OTIS for Educators. I'm Nicole Matthew.
And I'm Joe Quadrino.
And we're both curriculum specialists here at Tech. Today you're joining us to learn how to use Pear Deck with your Google Slides presentations.
Remember, if you have any questions during the course, use the chat box on the right side of your screen, and we'll get those questions answered for you.
All right, let's take a look at that agenda and get started. So today we're going to be talking all about Pear Deck and formative assessments, using them with our Google Slides presentation. So first we're going to start off with what is Pear Deck, then how to install and access Pear Deck, an overview of the sidebar, which is where a Pear Deck is going to appear on our slide screen. We're going to talk about how to add questions and template slides. From there, we'll actually start a lesson and go over that dashboard and projector view. And finally, we'll end on reviewing student data. All right, first up, what is Pear Deck? So Pear Deck is considered an add-on. So this is basically like a software that is being used within your Google app. It's going to increase the functionality and add some additional features. So it's an add-on for Google Slides. It's going to really transform your presentation to be dynamic and interactive. Students are going to join by a unique code or a URL. So those are two options that they do have, and I'll point that out for you. We also can insert questions for students to respond to and receive that valuable student data. So this is really what sets Pear Deck apart from some other software, is that we're actually incorporating those formative assessment questions right within our presentation and getting real-time data that we can look at right then and there or access later on. Okay, so how do we install and then access that Pear Deck add-on? So first thing we're going to go over is the install process. Now, if you don't have Pear Deck installed, for the first time you're going to go to the add-on section on our menu bar here up at the top. So it's right between Tools and Help. We're going to go to Add-ons, then Get Add-ons, and then from there we're going to search for Pear Deck. Now you may find, depending on if you have a G Suite for Education or how your administration has set up your domain, that you already have Pear Deck listed there. So while it might be listed, you might still need to go through and enable some of those permissions. Now when we're ready to access, we're going to do it in the exact same place. We're going to go to Add-ons. Then we'll see any add-ons that we have listed, including our Pear Deck. We're going to select that and then click on Open Pear Deck Add-on. So let's head over to the computer and I'll show you how to do that. All right. So here we are in our presentation. I'm actually going to go over to a demo presentation that we have here. You'll see I already have Pear Deck open, but if I didn't, I'm going to go over to Add-ons here. I'm going to click on that. Now, with my domain, already Pear Deck is listed for me. Somebody else in my domain, if they were to go to their Google Slides, they would also see this. They might still need to enable those permissions. But I'm going to show you Get Add-ons. So that's where we're going to go to find it if we didn't already have it. We're going to click on Get Add-ons. And more likely than not, you will see Pear Deck already listed up at the top for you. Right here it shows for me that it's installed. This is because Pear Deck is one of the most commonly used add-ons with Google Slides. If you were not to see it up here, you could search for it in the search bar up at the top here. But when you do find it, you're going to want to click on it. And you'll see mine says Slides Add-on. If yours was not installed, it would say to install it as well. And so this is going to be that same place where I access it later on. As I mentioned to you before, you are going to need to go and accept some different permissions. You're going to select the account that you would like it to sync to as well. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Now I'm going to go ahead and access it before, following those same procedures. I clicked on Add-ons, then Pear Deck for Google Slides, and now finally I'm going to click on that Open Pear Deck Add-on. When I do that, you're going to see on the side we have that sidebar where our Pear Deck is going to load. Let's head back to our presentation, and that brings up a great point. So now we're going to talk about that sidebar that we just saw come up on the screen. All right, so here up on our board, I have a screenshot of that sidebar that we saw come up. This is just an overview of what it looks like. On the side here, I've listed all the different things that we can find within that sidebar. We can access our template library, all of the different question types that we have available to access. We can also add audio to our slides, which is available if you have the premium option. Any featured content from Pear Deck that they'd like us to know about, and then a brief about Pear Deck video, which will always live there. Let's head over to the computer and I'll show you some of these. We're not going to go quite in depth into these specifics at the moment. In the next slide, we'll do that. All right. So I'm going to go back over to my science lesson here, and we're going to access our sidebar over here. All right. So here at the top, we have that template library. If I click on our template library, you're going to see there's lots of different options. We have lesson builders, so things that I can add at the beginning of a lesson, any learning development. We have critical thinking. We're going to go through and show these a little bit more later on, but just so you know, that's where I access all of those template library pre-made slides. Then here we have our Ask Students a Question. So we have a few different options here. I'll highlight them for you a little later on. Here's where we find that add audio option, featured content. Right now, the featured content is to make internet safe by having free digital citizenship curriculum. You can directly add it to your drive and use it as you see fit. And then at the bottom here is where we'd access our how-to video very quick. I highly recommend that you take a look at that video later on if you'd like to watch it. We're not going to look at it right now, but definitely something that when it's your first time using Pear Deck, you might want to take a look at. All right. So now we're going to talk about adding some of those questions and those template slides. I have broken down here for you. There's two very main distinctions between questions and templates. So questions do rely on you having a question already typed up on your slide that you are using. Whereas a template is something that's a little bit more grab and go. I might need to customize it a little bit to whatever topic that I'm doing, but it is basically a pre-made slide for me that just requires minor input. Whereas the questions, I do need to have that information on my slide. So we have a variety of different kinds. Text, all that is an open-ended response or a short response question. Choice, simply those multiple choice. Number, that's going to be where your students type in a number answer. So maybe it's math that they're doing that. You give them a math problem and you'd like them to give their final answer. If you want them to type in a number, you're going to select that option. Then we have a website. I can provide a link through a website where I want my students to interact with and then come back to the presentation. Drawing, this is one of my favorite features. So you can have students draw a response and it will send that to you. They can edit it, they can erase it. It's a really great way to involve students' other sides of learning. Then we have draggable. So that's where students are able to drag an icon to different parts of the screen. That can really turn something like a map or maybe a diagram into something that's fun and more interactive and gives you some valuable data on your students as well. So we will note that drawing and draggable questions are both premium options. Something that I will say about premium though is that you do get a 90-day free trial if you're using that. So definitely choose to explore these at that time if you want to take a look at that. Let's move on to our templates here. So there are three main broad categories for our templates. We have our lesson builders. So those can come at the beginning, during a lesson, or at the end of a lesson. They can be very quick formative assessment. What do you know about this topic? What did you learn? Very quick, easy things that you can insert. Then we have learning development questions. So something that I really like about these are our social, emotional questions. Those are really great for getting students to reflect on their learning, on how they're feeling. Great option to input that throughout our presentation if we want to check in with our students about, again, where they feel that they are at. And then finally, we have specific subject area templates. So for subjects like ELA, math, science, there's even a separate categories for our younger students as well. These are things that can really enhance a lesson that you can kind of grab and plug in. There, especially for subjects like science, there are presentation questions for if they were doing a lab report, things like that. Really great features that you might want to check out. Let's head over to the computer and I'll show you how to actually add these to a presentation and what it looks like when they have been added. All right, so let's head back over to our demo presentation here. And I'm going to select this first slide. So you'll see this doesn't look like a regular presentation slide. At the bottom, it says, it's got a little pair here, and it says, students, write your responses. If I see this on a slide, this lets me know that this is a slide that I have linked through Pear Deck. It tells you this is a Pear Deck slide, and something very important to keep in mind is this message over here on the side. Do not remove this bar. It is a Pear Deck interactive slide. If you were to delete that, and you easily could, if I click on that, you'll see I have this blue box that appears similar to when I add a picture to a slide. If you delete that, that takes away the ability for Pear Deck to collect student responses. When you go to present this, it will just present it as a normal slide. So it's very important that you keep that in mind. I would recommend not adding that to a slide until you are all finished with your presentation, moving things around. You don't want to accidentally delete that. All right, so we're going to go here to a question that I have, and I'm going to show you how to add a question here. So the question I have is describe the way that particles in each phase of matter move. So this hits me as an open-ended short response question. So as I mentioned before, for those open-ended short response, you're going to want to select text. It can be slightly confusing, the difference between text and choice, just by looking at them because it lists A, B, C. You might be thinking that it's a multiple choice option, but again, this is that short response. When I click on a question type, as it's loading, you'll see it says adding interactive question. And already at the bottom here, it just adds it right in as I had it before. And it specifies the different question types. So it says, students, write your response. Now I have a slide previously that says, students, draw anywhere on the slide. So it provides the directions for the students to kind of go through as they have. Now let's say this slide here, I wanted to add a draggable option. If I were to click on draggable, because I haven't done that before, it's going to give me a preview of what it means to be draggable and kind of give me that customizable option. So it gives us that little bit of a preview if we have never added that question type before. I recommend that you take the time, either now by pausing the video or later on, to go through and play around with these different question types and see maybe a presentation that you have to practice on, selecting the appropriate question types for that. So now let's go through to our template library. So here again is where I access those lesson builders that I mentioned, the learning development like critical thinking, social emotional, then all of those different subject areas that we even have world languages, ELA, lots of different options. So this is a science lesson. If I clicked on science, you'll see this one might be a great option for me, drawing the atom. So if I want to add that, I could put that in as well. We have a periodic table. Students can measure on a graph. Lots of great different options, pre-made Venn diagrams. So definitely play around with that as well. Now let's say I wanted to check in with my students, see how they're feeling, how the lesson's kind of going. And I'm going to click on that social emotional learning. So let's say halfway through the lesson, I want my student to do a little stress check with my students. See how they're feeling, what's kind of bugging them. So if I wanted to add it after this particular slide, it's important to note on the side here that I need to select in between the slides where I would like to add this template. I'm already clicked on there. If I click on that stress check, it's going to add it directly to my presentation, and we'll see it appear here in a moment. The thing that I really like about these ready-made slides is it gives me something that I can just easily put in, kind of get the temperature for how my students are feeling. And it's something I can access later on. So this is one of those draggables. I can tell because it tells me to students to drag the icon. And you'll see, again, very easily it just pops right in. We also have this what do you think about topic. I'm going to select that. Just so you get an idea of how you might need to customize some of these templates. I mentioned before they're kind of grab and go, but not entirely. I do need to edit it. To customize it, because otherwise it'll just say, what do you think about topic? So we want it to be very personal and connected to what our students are actually learning in that presentation. Again, I definitely recommend that you go back, go through, take a look at all of these different template options. There are so many available for you to be able to access. All right, so now that we've seen how to do that, we're going to move on to our next item. And what do we do once we have our presentation? We've added some of those interactive Pear Deck elements. How are we going to start that lesson? So we're going to be going over the dashboard and projector and how to actually start that lesson. So following the same procedure, if I were to have opened up a presentation that I worked on previously, not necessarily the one where I already have Pear Deck open, we're going to follow those same steps. Go into Add-ons, Pear Deck for Google Slides, open the Pear Deck add-on, and then when that sidebar appears on the right, at the very top, you'll see that Start Lesson option. So we're going to head over to the computer, we're going to start up our lesson, get some of our students in there as well, and see what the magic happens when we go between projector view and that teacher dashboard